Okay, so just to let you know in advance, this is going to be a lengthy video. Just testing my spectacles, my glasses there, to see, no, that's a bit of a tint on them, you can't see my eyes. These are going to be quite long videos, but I'm quoting something, so I'm going to make a part 2 to this. I've just been browsing online, as I sometimes do. What I sometimes do is type in a metaphorical question to Google to see what comes up. Just sort of general curiosity to see what sort of opinions are out there, etc. So the question typed in is, do feminists like sex, or something along those lines. And I came across this Daily Telegraph article from December last year, so still relatively recently, by Caroline Kentz. I'm not familiar with her, but she's obviously a feminist writer. And this is her response. What she's done is taken what she perceives to be stereotypes about feminism and sex and argued against them. So I'm going to quote what she says in this article, and I'll put a link to it, and then share some of my own thoughts on the points that she's laid out. So, point 1, this is quotations from her. Feminists don't like sex. Wrong, wrong, wrong. I'm a feminist and I like sex. I just want a culture where girls and women are told that sexual pleasure is a natural part of being female. Not dangerous or dirty, not something we need to be badgered or forced into, or shamed as a result of. What do feminists want sex to be? Consensual, safe, fun with a communicative, generous partner. How can you make space for this in your relationship? Ask, discuss, and be happy to take direction. It's all kind of common sense, right? See, we're not so scary, are we? Okay, actually, I'll respond to these point by point, that would be easier. Certainly the way she's arguing, that sounds very moderate and very reasonable. This is the sort of sex I think that most reasonable, normal people would want. The problem is, though, so often what men see from feminism is negativity concerning sex, that it's easy to see why the stereotype has developed. You know, she's saying that feminists want sexual pleasure to be a natural part of being female, but I can see hypocrisy in that argument, because the obsession over objectivity ignores the fact that in many circumstances it's women who are actually in a position where they have consented to being in that situation, and in many cases they enjoy it. The feminist argument that it's all about male control is a distortion. So the reason men think that feminists are anti-sex is because feminists tend to argue that all sex is about control. And it does seem that if a man enjoys sex, then he will automatically be branded as objectifying women. So for example, if a man sees the depiction of female sexuality in media and he's turned on by that, feminists will vilify him as objectifying women, even if the subject of that so-called objectification is a free-thinking woman who's doing it of her own will, who knows what she's doing, who's paid well to do it, and in many cases enjoys it. And actually I've just seen a clip with the actress Gemma Chan, who, by the way, I have a massive crush on. I think she's absolutely stunning, but that's besides the point. She was in a series called it's blown my mind now. It was a series about bondage and dominatrixes, that sort of thing. Annoyingly, it's just blowing my mind. But anyway, that's an example whereby clearly the woman has control, and it's men who get sexual gratification from being punished and so on. Some men do. But feminists don't acknowledge that there's situations like that, everything, they will turn everything into, I mean, feminists would say, oh, that's an even though that's a clear example where women have power, feminists would turn around and say that's just subjecting women to men's dark desires. Consensual, safe, fun. Yeah, sure, every reasonable person would agree with that. But that's another problem. Often when sex is consensual, feminists still take issue with it. They still portray it as a situation of the man controlling the woman. So it's easy to see where the stereotype has come from. For what it's worth, I don't believe that feminists hate sex. I mean, there's feminists who are mothers, so presumably they wouldn't, you know, put a bit of logic there. They would need to have sex to procreate, and well, maybe that's besides the point. But I can see where she's coming from. But she also has to recognise, rather than just challenging these stereotypes, I think she needs to recognise where they come from in the first place. The second point she makes: feminists aren't romantic. Wrong. We can be strong and soppy. If you want to buy her flowers or open her door, do it. But only do it because you want to, not because you expect fawning respect or gushing adoration in return. Well, I think that shows a selfishness in part of her argument, i.e., and again, to me that demonstrates hypocrisy. She's talking about equality, but then she's saying, well, if you're going to be chivalrous towards a woman, it's okay if she's not going to appreciate that. So where's the equality there? I've made other videos about chivalry, and loosely speaking I do believe in chivalry, but I also think that if women want chivalry, they should also be ladylike in return and show gratitude. I don't think that's unreasonable. And what she's saying is you shouldn't do it for that reason. I disagree, because that goes against her argument about equality. Now this one's interesting. Feminists don't like masculinity. Wrong. Where masculine energy is self-aware and accountable, it's very sexy. Everyone knows that feminists freaking love Ryan Gosling, right? That's because he has this innate male energy, a powerful emotional capacity, is aware of his own needs and those of his partner. Okay, maybe I'm projecting, because he has really nice eyes, clearly loves his dog and gushes over both his single mother and his female co-stars with equal awe. But by gosh, that's the kind of masculinity that gets his feminist motor running. Well, maybe she's speaking for herself, but a lot of feminists do take issue with masculinity, and I automatically assume it is a personification of patriarchy. In my experience, a lot of so-called male feminists frankly come across as self-hating men. They, in many cases, they're effeminate. I'm not saying always, but in many cases they are. And where there are masculine men, they tend to automatically be sort of termed interchangeably with misogynists or chauvinists, and I really have a problem with that. There's many areas I describe myself as pretty masculine and alpha, yet I also support women's rights strongly. Now what she's saying is that she doesn't have a problem with masculine men. Maybe she personally doesn't, but a lot of feminists do, and this is quite clear. If a man is masculine, feminists will automatically scrutinise him, because they will assume it's all about male power. Feminists do have a problem with male power. I'm not convinced. She's saying that's not the case. I'm really not convinced about that, because the constant mantra of equality is actually saying we hate the idea of men having power. And feminists don't care which woman has power as long as it's a woman, so they never ever question female power, even if that power can be misused in the same way that any power can be misused. So there's hypocrisy there. Another point, she's talking about a famous male celebrity, but if a man was to idolise or to praise the physical beauty of a female celebrity, he would automatically be accused of objectifying her. Now here she is gushing over Ryan Gosling, which I have no problem with, but if a man, like myself, was to comment about a beautiful female celebrity, it's just obvious that feminists would turn their nose up at that, because they hate the idea of men being attracted to women. Does that sound like an extreme statement? I don't care if it does, that's my impression. If a man takes any sort of pleasure from female beauty, then it's automatically branded as, well, he's objectifying her. Well, it's all about control, it's about what he wants. So feminists, there's abundant evidence and abundant material and statements and rhetoric to show that feminists do take issue with masculine men. I mean, I've personally been accused, because I'm interested in boxing, someone, a feminist I was in a debate with, actually accused me of using my masculinity to have control over women, which couldn't be more ridiculous. I'm into boxing, which is actually about competition with other men. It's to somehow portray that as it's just a ridiculous argument, and I think any reasonable person can see that. Next one. Feminists expect men to work harder at a relationship. Wrong. We just want equality in terms of the time and energy invested in a relationship. You may need to throw out some of your assumptions about what women want or don't want, and mentally dispose of the "don't text her first after a date" crap. Don't leave all the communication up to her, and don't expect her to always make time to accommodate your schedule. Well, this is clearly ridiculous, because it's so one-sided, and so it just ignores so many issues, because many men do make a lot of effort in relationships, and they do make a lot of effort to try and keep the relationship going and invest time into the relationship. And actually, it's arguable that men actually require emotional sentiment more than women. It's something that's not spoken about, but there was a recent study, and quoting studies is always a grey area because other studies are done and so on, but there was a study done that suggested that men find it much harder to get over the breakup of a relationship. Now, I know in my own life I've really struggled with that. Women, according to this study, find it easier. So the idea that only women care about time in relationships is just a distortion. And it also ignores the fact that there are selfish women out there who just want what they want and don't give anything in return to the man. That's absolutely the case. Feminists never criticise them. This mantra of equality is constantly used to justify feminism, and yet so often feminists ignore the fact that some women are very selfish and expect men to do everything, expect men to make all the moves, etc, etc, etc. So this is inconsistent with a lot of feminist positions. Finally, I'm running to the end of the video now, but I might have time to do this. Feminists see men as the enemy. Wrong. Feminists is about championing equality and autonomy, not giving women a stick to metaphorically beat men with. Whatever you might have read, feminists, or at least not all of them, don't see gender relations as battles which need to be won. Don't look at dating as a game. The goal is not for one of you to lose. Well, with all due respect to Caroline Kent, from a man's perspective, so much rhetoric that feminists come out with is about the terrible patriarchy, is about women being subjugated, is about male control, that is very, very hard not for us to see that that is a feminist perception of men. Now, I've made another video where I've argued that it's wrong to say feminists hate men, and I stand by that. I think it is a silly stereotype. Clearly there's many feminists who don't hate men. They're normal women who believe in women's rights, and they probably do genuinely believe in equality. It's not so much feminists I take issue with, it's more the ideology of feminism, and not necessarily the ideology, but how the movement has developed. You have your head in the sand if you think that there isn't a clear and obvious undercurrent of anti-male negativity in the modern Western feminist movement. It's indisputable. It's just indisputable. A moderate feminist like Caroline Kent can make as many excuses as she wants, and I'm assuming she's talking about herself here, but she does not speak for all feminists. I mean, she strikes me as a relatively, although I disagree with a lot of those points, they're worded in a pretty reasonable way. compared to the usual vitriolic and sort of vilifying manner a lot of feminists do write in. But to suggest that there is no evidence or that feminists don't see men as the enemy ignores the fact that, maybe she doesn't, but ignores the fact that the movement blatantly does. Or at least if it doesn't see men as the enemy, it goes out of its way to vilify men. You will never hear a feminist say anything positive about a man unless that man is slavishly devoted to feminism. This is the truth.